Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are so excited to have you with us. To give a brief rundown of the agenda, today we'll start by introducing ourselves, then talk a little bit about the application, process, interviews, and then we'll answer any questions you have. Feel free to use the chat function on YouTube if you have questions as we move through this information. We'll begin by introducing ourselves, so I'll go ahead and invite Elizabeth Dogby to get us started.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be with you today. My name is Elizabeth Dogby. I'm a Park Scholar in the class of 2021 from Knightdale, North Carolina. And I really just participate in a lot of things with Park with recruitment, helping with doing presentations like this. And then on campus, I am a mental health ambassador, a co-op program ambassador, and I work with the minority engineering program.
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to join you today. My name is Daniel Haller. I'm a Park Scholar in the class of 2022 from Charlotte, North Carolina. In terms of Park involvement, I recently served on the Distinguished Speakers Committee for the Gerald H. Elkin Distinguished Lecture in Science and Society. And outside of the Park program, I do research. I do research on the human gut microbiome, and I play oboe in the Raleigh Civic Chamber Orchestra.
Hi, everyone. I'm Annie Haunton. I'm a Park Scholar in the class of 2022, which makes me a junior. I'm from Hickory, North Carolina, and in my involvement in the program is I am a Park Ambassador, so I help with presentations like this. I serve on our Diversity Recruitment Task Force, our Leadership Academy Diversity Session, and our Mental Health Planning Committee. So Park takes up a lot of my time, so that's a lot of my involvement on campus, but I also am involved in the Global Health Cooperative as their associate director, and I volunteer with Service Raleigh.
Hello, everybody. My name is Noor Shahada. I'm also a Park Scholar from the class of 2022. I'm from Advance, North Carolina, tiny town in Davie County, and I'm mostly involved with Park through Park ambassadors, such as events like these, as Annie just said, and also Park Diversity Committee. I'm also Vice President of American Justice Corps on NC State campus, which works to solve the school-to-prison pipeline.
Hi, everyone. My name is Irene Nazario, and I am part of the 2023 class of Park. I'm from Guatemala, Puerto Rico, and Georgia. As far as Park, I am co-chair for the Legacy Committee in my class. And outside of Park, I am part of the Pre-Veterinary Medical Association, and I am co-director for Sube Ritmo, the only Latin dance team here at NC State.
Awesome. So to get us started today, we're going to start by talking about the application process for the Park scholarships. So we'll walk you through all the required materials for this application, as well as what that application process is going to look like. So to get started, we'll talk about how do you access the application, and you have two options for doing so. The first is your school endorsement. Schools can endorse up to 2 students to apply for the Park scholarships each year, and that endorsement is due October 15th. But that school endorsement is not your only option to apply for the Park scholarships. There is also self-endorsement, which is due November 1st. If your school does not endorse you or you don't attend an endorsing school, you just have to complete a quick form to self-endorse yourself to apply to the Park scholarships. We want to emphasize that self-endorsement will definitely not place you at a disadvantage. About 50% of applicants each year are self-endorsed, and that is reflected in our current group of Park Scholars. In fact, myself and Annie, currently on this call, were not endorsed by our schools, and Irene's school was not an endorsing partner. So the bottom line is, don't worry if you are not your school's endorsed applicant. For the next required material, we're going to talk about your actual application to NC State itself.
Thanks, Daniel. So in order to apply to Park, you'll need to apply by NC State's early action deadline, and you can do that through Common App or the Coalition app, whichever one you feel more comfortable using. It's important to note that early action is not binding, so it's not early decision where if you are accepted in this earlier pool, you have to go to state. If you're accepted early action, you still have the freedom to apply to other schools, to choose other schools if you get in other places. For your undergrad app, the selection committee will see your honors and activities, your personal essays, your short answer essays, and the additional information section. So it's important to make sure to not repeat any of those sections on the Park app because you'll be using up space that you could be using to, flesh out yourself a little bit more to expand on other activities and honors that you have. But also that'll just show up twice in the application. So it just ends up being extraneous information for us. And then on to Noor for more information about what recommendations will look like.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So there are 2 park-specific recommendations that you will need. Only one is required to be from a counselor, teacher, or principal, and you can have as many as up to 4 recommenders. But we know because of COVID, the selection committee knows you may not be able to build relationships as much with your current teachers. So if you have a rec letter from a previous year, it won't negatively impact your application. Now to Renee.
Thanks, Noor. All right, so now moving on to our high school transcript. So your high school transcript will be submitted to the undergraduate admissions, and a second copy does not need to be sent to the Park office. All of this will be due by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on November 1st, which is a Sunday. Also, due to COVID-19, the university is now test optional. So what this means is that if you indicate in your application that you do not want your ACT or SAT scores reviewed, then the Park office will honor that. In fact, the Park office actually decided to be test optional and actually decided that the selection committee would no longer see test scores before and that they will be reviewed internally by the Park staff. On to Elizabeth.
Thanks, Irene. So I'm sure you're wondering what are the actual selection criteria for the Park. So you guys will please hear that there is no minimum GPA or test scores required, but you do have to be able to get into NC State. And so this is a big point we like to stress. You don't have to have like a perfect 4.0 GPA or like the highest of whatever your school is possible to get. You just need to show that you are doing the best that you can given the resources that you have. And so to sort of evaluate this, we look at our 4 pillars, being scholarship, leadership, service, and character. So I'm going to expand a little bit more on scholarship. So this really goes beyond your academic success. We're really looking for, are you curious outside the classroom? What sorts of activities do you do that show scholarship in other ways besides getting really good grades or having straight A's? It's important to know that we do consider what is available at your school. So some candidates will come in having taken every AP course under the sun, and some will have come in not even knowing what an AP course is, and that's fine. It just depends on what was available at your school. Did you have a wide range of APs to pick from? Did you have a wide range of academically rigorous classes to choose from? Were you taking what was the highest academically rigorous level of classes available to you? And that's sort of what we look at, as opposed to did you just get straight A's? It's a much more complex profile than that. It's also, in addition to, have you shown your rage to learn? Are you excited about learning? Do you find unique ways to learn? Do you have little, projects and hobbies on the side that show how much you love to learn and how excited you are about learning more about the world around you? So we really try to get a more holistic profile of you and your scholarship outside of your GPA and your grades. And so if you're doing application and you're realizing, man, I haven't gotten the best grades, still apply. That's not the only thing that we look at. And then on to Renee to talk about leadership.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So for our leadership pillar, this can be seen throughout both formal leadership, which is kind of like if you're the president or treasurer of a club, which is more outlined, than informal leadership, which is more if you are in a mentor-mentee type situation, in a relationship where you still show, leadership, where you show, examples of, you being a good person to look up to from other people. Also, you have to remember that leadership is about listening well and supporting and inspiring others and taking risks, which can show a lot in your everyday life. So it's really looking back at the types of activity that you've done and just kind of seeing where you've taken those formal and also informal leadership roles. On to Annie.
Yes, thank you, Irene. So next I want to talk about the service pillar. And the service pillar, it's important to note that there's no minimum requirement for community service hours. Instead, the selection committee is simply looking for students who have a passion and dedication to affecting change. Whether that's on a national, local, or global level, those are all things that are acceptable for the PART program. So you might ask yourself, how do you show concern for others, and how do you identify needs and find ways to meet those needs? It's really important that in your application you show that you genuinely are passionate about helping others, and that's what you care about, and it's not simply for doing a number of hours. Next, I'll pass it on to Noor, who's going to talk a little bit about character.
Thanks, Annie. The character pillar really revolves on if you as a person do what is right or set a positive example in your community by demonstrating honesty and integrity. Often these 4 pillars overlap in your experiences, and character really embodies who you are as a person and trying to bring your genuine self to the table. Don't feel though is that you have to be the best in each of these areas. You can be pointy and be better in one area than another, and that's completely fine. You'll also find that PARCC essays are geared towards these 4 pillars, so please take advantage of that when writing in your application.
So now that we've talked a little bit about what the PARCC Scholarship Program values and what PARCC Scholars are all about, we're going to tell you a little bit about how your application will be reviewed. So there are a couple stages involved in this review process. First, when you submit your initial application, it will be reviewed by 2 selection committee members plus members of the PARCC staff. So you'll have a lot of eyes on your application, taking a lot of different perspectives on the information you're providing. By December 23rd, you'll hear back about whether or not you were selected as a semifinalist. To give you an idea of the numbers, last year we had about 2,100 applications and we chose 445 semifinalists. If you are selected as a semifinalist, you get to participate in video interviews, which will be either on January 9th or January 10th. So please mark those dates, January 9th and 10th, on your calendar in case you have video interviews that day. These video interviews will be conducted by 2 to 4 NC State alumni, many of whom are PARCC alumni, which will give you a great chance to learn a little bit more about NC State and the PARCC Scholarships Program by interacting with the people who are interviewing you. In late January, you will be notified of your finalist status, whether or not you have been selected as a finalist. And in previous years, we've selected about 112 finalists. And now I'll turn it over to Elizabeth to talk about final selection activities.
Thanks, Daniel. So this last leg of selection is finalist selection activities, like Daniel said. So usually those are on campus, but given the circumstances, we're looking into doing those virtually just to ensure that everyone is safe. So FSA only has 2 evaluative parts. So you'll have an interview with 3 to 4 selection committee members. It'll be similar to your phone interview. Again, just getting to know more about you, talk to you a little bit more before they make their final decisions. And then the group discussion task, which you'll do with others, finalist at the weekend, sort of seeing how you work in group settings and how you tackle a problem as part of a whole. So those are the only 2 evaluated activities. Everything else in the weekend is for your benefit, just learning about the university, speaking with faculty, speaking with students. As much as we want you to come to NC State as a PARCC, NC State is a great place to be even without PARCC, and so FSA really strives to show you that this is an incredible place to be regardless. And so a lot of the activities are again just for you, just to again learn more about state and figure out, would this be a good fit for me? Final selection activities is really where I fell in love with state and decided I would come to state regardless. So it really is a good time in that last round of selection. And then after that round, you'll be notified of your award status in early March. And since the scholarship offer, just like the early action decision from the university, since this offer is not binding, you have plenty of time to decide whether or not you want to take it. As really talented students, as I know all of you are, you'll be thinking about offers from other universities, from other scholarship programs. So you'll have plenty of time to decide if PARCC and if NC State are right for you. And so the final class of 2025 will be announced around May 1st. On to Annie for some general advice about applying and selection.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth, for that introduction. So I just wanted to give some general advice because that's often a question we get is like, how can I be more prepared to complete my application and be selected as a Park Scholar? So first, I want to highlight a general resource that is new to Park this year. It is called the Park Under-Resourced Assistance Program, or PURA, as we call it, as an acronym. This is a service that is being provided to allow students to get from under-resourced communities to get feedback on their essays from other students who are current Park Scholars before they submit their application. If you go on our website under the Apply tab, you can get the link to participate in this program. And you simply, like I said, will be matched with a or you get to select actually a peer editor to look at your essays and give some feedback before you submit those applications. So if you are from an under-resourced area, we highly suggest that you apply to this program, or not apply, but opt in is, I guess, how you would say it. And that'll give you some additional support through the process. Another general piece of advice is that in interviews, you will be asked behavioral questions only. We believe that the best indicator of future behavior is past behavior. So this is why we do the behavioral questions. And if you go on Google, you can look up what a behavioral question is. But simply what it is a question that's going to ask you about something that's happened in the past, or to give an example of a scenario in which something happened. So also about your application and essays, we want you to be authentic. Share your passions, tell us who you are. If you have multiple passions, we want to see that too. A piece of advice is to not copy and paste your personal essay from the Comment or Coalition app for one of the Park essays. We specifically have these Park essays to be on top of that Comment application. We will read that application as well. So use that as kind of an extra opportunity to share even more about yourself, or an additional angle or perspective on your experiences in high school. Lastly, I'm going to go ahead and invite other panelists to share a piece of personal advice, but I'll start by giving mine. So my piece of personal advice is, if you're questioning whether you would be a good Park Scholar and you're really reflecting on that question, you're probably a good fit. Simply by considering those 4 pillars and reflecting on your own experiences and how they match up. If you're really reflecting on that and have a few things to share for each of those pillars, you're probably a good candidate. So go ahead and apply. I think a lot of us can relate in that we didn't necessarily think we would get it or thought it was a long shot, but we applied and now we're here. So don't be afraid to apply.
I'll go ahead. Oh, sorry, Irene.
Go ahead.
I'll go ahead and add a piece of advice about the behavioral interview questions. It can be really daunting to try to think about how to prepare for those, but my recommendation would be to be thinking about experiences you've had in your life, maybe throughout your high school career, that say something about you or that were impactful to you, so that you just kind of have a library of meaningful experiences that you have experienced to draw from when you go into that behavioral interview.
Thank you, Daniel and Annie, for those really great pieces of advice. I definitely agree a lot that, we all probably didn't think that we were going to get it. And then when we did, it's just, now we're here. But my piece of advice is more about, just when you're applying, when you're going through the interviews, just really show your passions. People can see, the love that you have for whatever discipline you're going to study, whether it be engineering or the arts, and in my case, veterinary. But whatever it is that you're passionate about and that you love, just let it shine through, because that really shows a lot.
Yeah, I'll definitely add on to that and to say, also just be yourself. Do not pretend to be someone you're not. We want you for you, because you're all probably amazing people. So just really stick to who you are and show us how wonderfully genuine you are as a person. So.
And I guess the advice that I would give is make sure when you're in interviews with the phone interviews and the finalist selection activity interviews, have questions for the panelists. They are interviewing you, but you are also interviewing them. You're trying to figure out, is this a good place to be? Are like the alumni in the program interesting? Are they helpful? What's the vibe of the program? What's the vibe of NC State? So just ask whatever questions you feel like you need to get to that, to get those answers. Because as much as it serves you to be in the program, you always want to make sure that you're somewhere that you feel comfortable and that you feel at home. And so if you have like specific issues that are really important to you, if you're looking for support around specific identities or specific experiences you want to have, ask about those. Because again, you don't want to, go through the selection process and be excited about coming to state and then realize that, the resources that you wanted here aren't necessarily what you wanted, or you don't know where to start engaging on campus. So I think that's something really important that I did that was really helpful to me during selection.
Awesome. So those are some pieces of personal advice from us. So now we will move into answering your questions. So please remember to put your questions in the YouTube chat and we will kind of tabulate them and answer them as best we can. So to start off with, Catherine asked a question. When starting my application, I realized that my Common App addressed what I want to write about for your first question. Do you want my Common App alongside the Park application? Can I adapt my Common App to address the Park question, or should I write about something different? And I think, Annie, did you want to take a shot at answering that one?
Yes, absolutely, Daniel. So, Catherine, thank you for the question. As I mentioned in the previous general advice portion, which you may or may not have heard, we do encourage you to write a different essay and not simply use your Common application for the Park applications. Remember that the Park applications are in addition to the NC State application, and we will read your Common application. So I know for me, when I was applying, I was really worried that my Common application would not be seen because I felt like I really shared my story in the Common application. So just know that it will be seen, and I would use the Park application to take a fairly different perspective or write about something different if you have something else you can think of.
Thanks for that great answer, Annie. So if Rene, this next question is for you. Jillian is looking to major in animal science as she wants to attend vet school in the future. How does the Park Scholarship help you grow your interest and provide resources?
Thank you, Elizabeth and Jillian, for the question. I actually really, really like this question. Park Scholarship has definitely helped me a lot with connections. That is one thing that the Park Scholarship, well, many things, but this is one thing that the Park Scholarship does extremely well. I was able to get connected with my current mentor, which is something that you'll learn about later on. My Park mentor is actually Dr. Flowers, who is one of the most known professors here for veterinary. He's been in the program for about 33 years, if I'm correct. Also, I was able, through some meetings and things like that, to get connected with a current professor that I'm doing research with turtles about. His name is Dr. Lubar, and he works at the vet school, and also just connecting me to upperclassmen students who are going through the vet application process and things like that. So definitely the Park Scholarship helps you a lot with learning more about the vet program and the vet school, and even other vet schools that might be a good fit for you.
Thanks, Annie. Our next question is from Angela for Elizabeth, and it is, how are the Park Scholarship recommendations different from the ones we submit to the university?
Thanks, Nora Angela. So they can be the same recommenders. I think I remember when I was applying, I had the same recommenders for the university and for Park, but they need to be submitted through the Park specific form to make sure that Park selection committee sees them. So that's super important that those are submitted. I guess your recommender will feel like they're submitting them twice, but they need to be submitted in that Park specific form to make sure that the committee sees them and your recommendations get registered in the system.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm going to go ahead and ask our next question, which is from Santhi, I think. And this is for Noor. So with regards to the first Park essay, which asks you to tell about a story about potential to make lifelong contributions, should the story be about all four pillars or any one of two pillars or only about academics?
Thanks, Annie. So throughout your essays in general, we encourage you to try and relate to the pillars as much as possible. But just as I said before, you don't have to have you don't have to have strength across all four of them. If you have a strength in one more than others, feel free to highlight that one. But we don't encourage you to only just write about academics or anything specifically related to that, and to just kind of intertwine the story into how the pillars would interact with it.
Thank you, Noor. Now we can move on to our next question, which is from Evan. And his question is, how long does it take to get a link to the WolfPaw portal? I've applied to NC State and I want to make sure I get my transcript uploaded in time for the Park Scholarships deadline, November 1st. And Elizabeth.
Thanks, Irene. And thanks, Evan, for your question. So 10 to 14 days after submitting your NC State app is when you should get that link to WolfPaw, and then you can go ahead and upload your transcript. So you should have plenty of time to do it, given that you submit with enough time.
Thanks, Elizabeth. This is another question from Evan as well for Daniel. Can you share examples of some of the ways you have found service opportunities on campus and in the community?
That is an excellent question, and I'll start by sharing some of the Park Scholarship specific service opportunities that we have. So Park Scholars are intimately involved in a couple of major service endeavors in Raleigh. The first is called Service Raleigh, which is a really special day of service put on by the Park Scholarships and our partners, where hundreds of NC State students go out across the Raleigh community and volunteer all over the place, just helping with whatever the community needs, which is a really cool experience. We also have the Krispy Kreme Challenge, which, if you've never heard of it, it's a very interesting race. You run down to a Krispy Kreme near NC State's campus, you eat a dozen donuts, and then you run back, and it helps raise money for medical research. So those are cool Park Scholarship specific service opportunities for myself, and then everyone else can chime in after I share for myself. I'm really interested in science-related service. So I participated in Science Olympiad in high school, and I continued to be involved in that program now kind of on the other side. And I founded an organization devoted to helping to create event content for Science Olympiad. So I recommend trying to look for service opportunities that pertain to your personal and professional interests, and there are a lot of those at NC State. So would anyone else like to add your service involvement?
I can chime in here. So one really good site if you're looking for experiences related to community service before you come to NC State is looking on websites such as Activate Good or Helping Hands. Those are two websites that you can just Google, and they have postings even now in the time of COVID that allow you to find things you're passionate about. And in terms of finding service when you're on campus, I would definitely say that there are plenty of opportunities. One thing I did was I connected with we have a leadership and civic engagement office, and they are more than happy to help pair students with potential opportunities. So that's one place that I went. Additionally, I just started Googling and did some research on local nonprofits in the area that worked with things that I'm passionate about. So for myself, I'm really passionate about social work and medicine. So I looked for medical clinics that are free of service, are free and for under-resourced populations. And so I applied to some of those. I additionally care about making sure that people have access to education. So I am currently tutoring in a certain local program called C4. And that's been another way that I've been able to become involved even during the pandemic.
I guess I can go. Also, one way to find service opportunities is also through clubs. I know that a club that I'm involved in is the Pre-Vet Club here at State, and they always offer a ton of opportunities to go help out with certain shelters, or if you want to help out a veterinarian at a certain clinic. So it definitely, there are many, many opportunities for service here at State. Anybody else have any other service ideas? All right, so now we're going to move on to a question from Caitlin. So for the peer reviews on park essays, where would you find that? If Annie can go and answer that one.
Yes, thank you, Irene. So on the park website, under the Apply tab, you will find a Park Under Resource Assistance button. You can also access it directly at the following link. So it's going to be park.ncsu.edu/apply/PURA/. So those are two ways to access the PURA application or the PURA form to get involved.
This next question is from Emily, and she asks, if we asked a teacher for a recommendation to NC State general admissions, are we able to use the same teacher for a recommendation for the park scholarships? And that is a question for Annie.
Yes, so you are allowed to use the same teacher recommendation. I believe Elizabeth spoke to that earlier, but yes, that is correct. You can use your teacher recommendation for the park scholarship. Just make sure that you do go into the park scholarship form and put that teacher's name specifically for the park program. And I will go ahead and ask the next question, which is from Blake. And he asked, roughly how many people selected for the Park Scholars are out of state?
Thanks, Annie and Blake. About 1/3 of the class is usually out of state. And a question from Sydney for Irene. Does the major you're applying for impact the decision process?
Alrighty, thank you for the question. So it does not, because many people have changed them, you know, when they get here and they realize that maybe that isn't the path that they want to follow. Also, even though a lot of our parks are engineers in the engineering field, don't be discouraged. I'm certainly not an engineer major. So you can also come in as undecided, which means that you get to explore many different majors and see which one is the right fit for you.
Thanks for that answer, Irene. So the next question comes from Santi. Should the undergraduate application and the park application be submitted at the same time or just any time before November 1st? And that question is for Daniel.
That's a great question, Santi. Just by November 1st. You don't have to submit them at the same moment. As long as they're both in before the deadline, you are golden.
Alrighty, and now we have a question by Cecilia. Should the recommenders write a different recommendation that is more specific to the park scholarship, or is it just as good if they submit the same letter they did for general application?
Hi, thank you for that question. I think as Annie said earlier, they can use the same general recommendation that is submitted for NC State.
Thanks for that answer, Noor. So our next question is from Jean-Luc Pavel for Daniel. I'm interested in playing varsity sports at State. Is it possible to do that as a park scholar, and how would that work?
That is a great question. Yes, it is possible, but not many students do it. Both being a park scholar and being a varsity athlete are big commitments. So you could certainly make it work, but they would both be pretty major time commitments. So it might be a bit challenging, but certainly possible. So you can go for it.
All right, the next question is from Evan. For Elizabeth, when you're doing activities and events with Park Scholars, are you mainly with your class cohort or do you interact regularly with all 4 years of Park Scholars?
Thank you for that question. So Park program, like built in, we have regular meetings with both your class and other classes. We have very intentional meetings where like the freshmen will meet the seniors, and then every class will meet every class at least once. And then there are a number of activities throughout the 4 years to make sure that you're still interacting with the new classes as they come in. So the answer is yes, you will interact regularly with all 4 years of Park Scholars. I know everyone here through random interactions, both in the park office. When they came in, I met them. I was actually a freshman retreat facilitator for Rene's class, so I know her class super well. So yeah, you'll interact pretty frequently with other members of different park classes. It isn't just yours.
Yes, so our next question is from Matt, and Matt asked, I go to a small Quaker school in Durham, North Carolina. My school doesn't give grades, rank students, or have AP classes. Advanced classes, however, are offered. Should I show this in the additional information section in the coursework section? I can chime in here and then offer it up to anyone else. So there is an explanation box where it'll ask you to explain any additional circumstances that you wish the Park Scholarship Office to know. So that is something that you can put in the application. Additionally, we do consider where you came from. We'll get a school profile, so it should be clear there that you maybe don't have rank or you have advanced classes. So just when you're talking or when you see that explanation box, just make sure to make it clear there.
Our next question is from Jamie, and it asks, does the Park Scholars program tie into the honors or scholars programs, or are those separate? And I can go ahead and answer that because I'm involved in the honors program. They are separate, and you are certainly welcome to be a member of either. I think a good portion of Park Scholars are also members of the honors program or the scholars program. They complement each other in a lot of ways, and many first-year Park Scholars live in the Honors and Scholars Village on campus. But they are separate programs, and you do not have to be a member of one to be a member of the other.
I can also chime in a little bit here. I'm part of the scholars program, and it definitely, they kind of overlap at times. Some events, you can attend for Park that are also for scholars, but it's definitely a very fun experience.
Thanks. Another question we have is, what resources are offered through the Park Scholarship and or from NCSU for students who identify as LGBTQIA+? Are there any Park Scholars who identify this way? Great question. We actually have the GLBT Center on campus, which does a lot of different events and raises awareness about many different things going on around campus. We also have LGBTQ Park meetings as well for parks who identify as LGBTQ, and those are held every so often. So we do have a lot of different events and support systems for those who identify as LGBTQ.
Alrighty, so our next question is from Lee Quibion Tate for Annie. Can the Park Scholarship be used for virtual learning, or is it only offered for on-campus learning?
Yes, thank you for this question. I'm assuming that you're referring to potentially in the COVID pandemic. And right now, NC State is completely online. So students are still being funded through the Park Scholarship Program for their online learning. Additionally, whenever conditions are quote unquote normal, students can take online classes. So that is something that can be kept in mind. But students typically, most students I would say are in person during normal times, only because the scholarship does cover housing. So that's something that is a nice benefit, that room and board are covered. But yes, during the pandemic, you are able to take some online classes. And I'll actually ask the next question. So this is to Irene. Are those who list their ACT/SAT scores at an advantage?
Thank you, Annie, for the question. They are not. Especially considering the situation that is going on right now, I doubt that it would not put anybody at an advantage. It's just an added bonus if you do want to put it in, but it's definitely not.
And to follow up with that, there are no minimum ACT or SAT scores. So don't worry about meeting a particular threshold if you do decide to submit those scores. And our next question is from Christina, and she asks, do Park Scholars reside somewhere specifically, or are you free to choose where to live? And that question is for Irene.
Thank you, Daniel and Christina. So for the first year, I am not very sure what NC State's regulations will be for next year upcoming freshmen, since the pandemic is going on. But in normal times, freshmen will be required to live on campus. But after that, Park Scholars are free to choose where they want to live. Right now, I'm actually in an apartment living with 2 other Park Scholars from my class. So you are definitely able to choose where you want to go, where you want to live. Thank you for your question. Also, I'll ask the next question. It's by Graham. Adding to Sarah's question, what are the lowest ACT/SAT score requirements that will not put our application at a disadvantage? What is the lowest SAT/ACT score that has been accepted into the Park class? And will being in the 50th percentile for the NCSU admissions keep you at a competitive application to Park? And this is for Nor.
Thank you. So I think the range that we had before for the previous class was 1250 to 1560, but that will not put you at a disadvantage if you score low. Like we reiterated before, all we really care about this semester mostly is just your essays and your passions, more than your test scores. So it really doesn't put you at a disadvantage if you don't score the hottest on the ACT or SAT. We're also trying to be very understanding with COVID and everything going on. So don't let that deter you from applying, because we really do care about you and your passions more than anything else. And then the next question comes from Caitlin. It's for Elizabeth. On the Common App, it has a section to apply for the honors and scholars programs. If you do not apply for them now by the early deadline, can you apply for them later than the regular deadline?
Thanks, Caitlin and Nor. I am going to say yes. I believe that's what I did. So I had actually I had gone into state, I had accepted Park, and that's when I applied for honors. So unless things have changed since I applied, which I guess is a long time ago now, that should still be the same. You still, if you're still on the fence about honors or scholars, you can definitely wait and apply before the regular deadline.
I think also, if someone can correct me, this year, if you apply, you automatically get into the programs. Is that correct for anybody who knows?
That's what I got when I
Okay.
applied to the Park, and when I got in, I was also part of it. Also, if you do have any questions about the Honor Scholars Program, if you look up their website, there's Dr. Scott O'Leary. He is, I believe, still the head of the Honor Scholars Village, and he is a very great person and would love to answer all your questions via email or whatever information he has listed.
I second that recommendation. And the next question is from Jillian. Is there anything you would recommend putting into the additional information section of the Park Scholarships application? And that question is for Elizabeth.
Thanks, Daniel, and thank you for the question, Jillian. So I think I think we had an earlier question about like special school circumstances. Definitely put that in. If your school has a GPA scale that's different, I think that should come up in like school profile information, but put that in there just to be sure, like just in case. I think I put in my additional information section just some information about like my family's background to give some context about like where I was coming from, like what, um, where I was operating from as a baseline, in terms of like, just to give context of like my academic activities, everything that I had in my application. So it's really just whatever you feel like would give more context to whatever you've put um, in your essays and in the rest of your application. So really that additional information section is like if it's like I want Park to know this, but I don't really know where it would go and anything else, put that in additional information. Yeah, that's what I would say. Does anyone else want to chime in about that? All right. So I will go ahead and ask the next question. This is from Lee Besserev. If a student went to a middle college, high school, and already has an associate's degree along with their high school degree, are they still eligible for the Park Scholarships Program, even though they will only need 2 more years? And that question is for Annie.
Yes, thank you for that question. Yes, so students who go to an early college or a middle college, as they may be called, you are eligible for the park, although you have to apply as a first-year applicant, not a transfer student. So one additional thing to note is if you only have 2 more years, a couple options you have are, so the park is funding for 8 semesters, so 4 years. So a couple options you might have in addition to that is going on to pursue a master's degree at NC State. You can receive funding to do that with your additional 2 years after complete that you would have after completing the 2 years to get your bachelor's, or you may be able to add on, say, an extra major or a couple extra majors and a minor as well. So that's something you could do with that additional time that you have since you got ahead in high school. The next question that I'll pose to everyone, but Noor can maybe start for us. Why did you choose the Park Scholarship?
Thanks, Annie. So there are many reasons that I actually ended up choosing the Park Scholarship. One of the biggest things for me was the network and a vast amount of Park alumni around the country who really offer a great support system in trying to help you navigate college and what do you want to do with your life. And just overall, like as a support system, in case you have any questions. Another thing also is the Park community and staff. And one thing is you certainly find your people as a park, and the park staff are there to support you in any of your needs. And just as well, all the different trips and activities we get to do as parks. One of the best experiences that I've had as a park was studying abroad. And you can do that through your park enrichment grant. You can apply for some extra money to help you study abroad in the summer, or you can take a whole semester if you'd like. I actually studied abroad in Florence, Italy, which was a really fantastic experience for my art studies minor. And also, we do Learning Lab 1 and Learning Lab 2 trips. So Learning Lab 1 trips, usually we do a trip anywhere in North Carolina surrounding a certain issue. I know my class, we did disaster preparedness with the Lumbee tribe, as well as our second year, we went to DC and we studied mass incarceration. So there's certainly many trips and learning experiences that you can also take through Park that really offer a great opportunity. And I can pass it to anybody else who'd like to add.
I can add on. So one of the big reasons that I chose the park was also because of the great veterinary program that NC State has. I fell in love with it, and the passion that everybody around seemed to have, for animals and things like that. But one big thing that also made me choose the park scholarship was something that Nora said as well, is the community that park builds. I'm an out-of-state student. I'm an out-of-state student, and I've also moved around a lot. I was born in Guatemala and then lived in Puerto Rico. So it was very important for me to have kind of a support system and have, people that I could, trust and rely on. And that has definitely been something that has happened. And especially like my close friends, I've gotten a lot from the park, and I've met a lot of them through there. So yeah.
I can chime in here as well. The park program and NC State in general, I just felt when I came to finalist weekend, I was really sold by how genuine everyone was and how hands-on people seem to be. So our motto at NC State is think and do. And it might sound a little bit cheesy, but I feel like the do part is what really sold me on NC State. I feel as though people are ready to get involved, are ready to get engaged in community service. They want to do research. They want to be a part of applying their classes to in person to see not just the theoretical, but really how it can make an impact on the community at NC State, the community in North Carolina, and the community globally. Another thing that I think that is important to know about Park is that a reason why I chose it is the ability to pursue an interdisciplinary degree or to wander. I've actually changed my major. So that was something that the Park program is willing to support and is willing to kind of help you understand that your path may not be as straight as possible, but they're going to be there to support you through that. So that's something else that drew me to NC State is I knew that I wanted to pursue multiple paths and wasn't sure exactly where I was going to go, but I knew the park would help me in discerning my vocation. And lastly, the programming aspect of Park has been really important to me. So the park isn't just a take your money and run type of deal. There is a lot of programming around the 4 pillars and helping you build that. So that's something that really drew me to the program as well.
Would anybody else like to add before I move on? All right. The next question is from Evan, and it asks, could you clarify what was said a minute ago? If you are selected as a Park Scholar, do you automatically get accepted into the Honors and Scholars Program?
Thanks for the question, Evan, and thanks for giving us an opportunity to clarify. Yes, not only if you are selected as a Park Scholar, but if you are selected as a finalist, which is the stage before being selected as a Park Scholar, if you are selected as a finalist, you are automatically guaranteed admission to either the Honors Program or the Scholars Program, and you just have to choose one or neither. It's up to you. But yes, you get automatic admission to either the Honors or Scholars programs if you make the finalist stage of the Park Scholarships. We encourage you to go ahead and apply anyway, because it's an awesome program, whether or not you're a Park Scholar.
Okie doke. Our next question is from Santi. Does the park committee also see the Common App additional/optional essays? So these are the COVID optional essay and the details or qualifications not reflected in the application essay. And that question is for Annie.
So I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure, but I do believe that that is a yes. I know that the common application said yes, we got confirmation. The answer is yes. The park application committee or selection committee will see your Common App additional essays. So that includes your COVID optional essay and your any other details you want to share that may not have been reflected in your main application. And I'll go on to ask the next question. So from Graham, we got a question, what role does race and/or economic status play into selection for the scholarship?
Thanks for that question, Graham. That's a great question. So we understand in the Park Scholarships program that race and economic status are things that can have deep impacts on who you are, the opportunities you have, and what you've been able to do in high school. Because we have what's called a holistic review process, these things are taken into consideration when we're evaluating who you are and what you've been able to accomplish. But please know that because this is a merit scholarship, need is not a determining factor.
Thank you, Daniel. Now we're going to move on to a question from Lee. Is there a stipend that goes along with the Park Scholarship? And this is for Elizabeth.
Thanks for that question, Lee. So there is. So the way that the stipend works, it'll vary for everyone. It'll vary for out-of-state students versus in-state students. I quickly explain the process here. Basically, what happens is, so Park is full ride, so everything is covered. And so what happens is the Office of Financial Aid, Office of Scholarships and Financial Aid will calculate what your total cost of attendance is. That includes books, room and board, transportation, tuition, obviously, just everything together. And it gives that number to Park. And then Park will pay for everything and the excess of that. So because cost of attendance includes transportation, books, and just like random expenses, that excess that isn't charged to the university just comes back to you. So obviously, you're not paying the university for like you're not paying for like using the buses, you're not paying for if you live off campus, I'm not like giving money to the university to give me groceries. So all of that money that's calculated when they're calculating cost of attendance just comes back to me, and that's what I get as a stipend. So it'll vary depending on whether or not you live on campus. It'll vary depending on if you have a meal plan. There are some variations that will change your cost of attendance, or the cost of attendance that's charged to the university, which will in turn change the money that comes back to you as your stipend. If there needs to be follow-up questions on that, I'm more than happy to take them because I know that was a little confusing. I'll go ahead and ask the next question. And again, if there's follow-up questions on that last one, we can address those further on. So this next question is from Graham for Irene. What activities are done at the finalist weekend and what will they look like virtually?
Thanks, Elizabeth. And Graham, let me just say, that is a great question. Right now, we're trying to figure out and explore several options. But we really want it to be like an engaging time when, without adding any exhaustion from Zoom fatigue, because that is a real thing now. Previous activities included Spend the Night, which was, a student would come and you would stay in the dorm of a current Park Scholar, interest group discussions about what interests you have in clubs or things like that, a talk with the director, speaking with Park faculty scholars, and an NC State resources fairs and others. I'm sure it'll be something similar to that, hopefully, and we'll be able to give you as much information as you need during those times.
Thanks, Irene. This question's from Katie for Daniel. Any suggestions if enrolled in several institutions? I'm enrolled at 3, NCSSM, my county high school, and our community college partnership innovation academy. It's hard to decide what to highlight. So I guess this question is asking, what should they highlight?
Great question, Katie. The biggest thing is to make sure all of your coursework is included in your application. So the Park Scholarship Selection Committee gets that information from your application to NC State. So that coursework that you put into NC State's Office of Undergraduate Admissions is how we get your transcript. So make sure that all of that information from your institutions is included in that application. And of course, there's an additional information section specifically for coursework on the Park app. So if you're having trouble fitting everything in, that's a great spot for you to kind of highlight the different coursework that you've done at your various academic institutions. Our next question is for Irene, and it asks, what are the most competitive requirements in the application, and how might one stand out from the rest of the applicants? And that is for Irene.
Thanks, Daniel. So honestly, right now, what I can think about is high impact experiences, which is kind of like, any research that you do, any internships that you have, or, if you might not have time for research and internships because, school and your family, also having work experience there, any work experience that you've had, from working in a lab to maybe, hostess at a restaurant, anything really, really helps out. Also by just, being yourself, this is how you stand out, the second part of the question. You just really need to be yourself and just show your passions and how curious you are to learn. And, that will just really shine through all the qualities that you have. That's honestly the best way to stand out and the best advice that I got during finalist weekend.
Alrighty, our next question is for Daniel. How would you recommend asking people for recommendations?
That's a great question. During a normal year, I think we would all highly advise asking in person for your recommendations, but that may not be possible this year, so that's totally understandable. When I ask for a recommendation, I talk about the relationship I have with that person and why I think they would be able to write a good recommendation for me and kind of explain what characteristics I have that fit whatever I'm applying for. So try to highlight for the person you're asking why you think they would be able to make a strong case for you, and maybe also share with them your application materials. How are you trying to present yourself for this application? And if the person that you're asking the recommendation for, if they have that information about you, they can write a much more effective recommendation that really ties into the overall picture that you are painting of yourself for the application.
Yes, thank you, Daniel. The next question is from Graham. And Graham asked, should I mention canceled internships, summer research opportunities due to COVID? And Nor will take this one.
Thanks, Annie. So feel free if you would like to. As much info as you can put into your application is helpful. You can write that into the additional box if you would like, or include it any other way, but it's not required.
I can chime in a little bit on this. I know that I had an internship that was canceled because of COVID, and I feel like any information that you put, if they have invited you to be part of an internship program, I feel like that is an honor. So I definitely would put it on the application. And this next question is for me. Can you use the Park scholarships for summer sessions, and do they offer short session classes? And this one is for Elizabeth.
Thank you, Renee. So Lee, the answer is kind of complicated. You can. I have. The only thing is that, so as Annie mentioned earlier, Park is an 8-semester scholarship. So the only reason that I could was because I took a gap semester and I had an extra semester left of funding that I applied towards the summer. So if you are going to use your funding on a summer, it needs to be because either you, for instance, so I did there's a co-op program at State. So I was working that semester. And so the classes that I took that summer were just replacing a semester's worth of coursework. So I'm still going to total up to 8 semesters of funding, but I didn't actually, it's not like I did all of my it's not like I did 8 regular semesters and then had an extra summer of funding. So if you're going to use your funding towards the summer, it needs to be, again, because you missed a semester, you took a gap semester and you have like extra funds left over, or it needs to be like you're using that summer to do like another block of coursework that will help you graduate early. So for instance, you can do, if you use the Park to pay for summer classes after your freshman year, you just need to be you need to be, that summer after freshman year needs to be saving you a semester at the end because it takes away from your total. That was another confusing answer and I do apologize. So if there's follow-up questions on that one, please let us know. Oh, and then as for short session classes, I think you're referring to, I assume this is referring to in the summer, or 8-week sessions during the semester. 8-week classes are covered as long as it's, again, during the semester, or during the summer that's replacing a semester. And then during the summer, you can take 10-week or 5-week classes, and both of those will be covered under the scholarship.
And it looks like we have a follow-up question to that one, asking about, would the scholarship also fund transportation for college clubs? For example, a college ultimate Frisbee tournament out of state, and that can go to Annie.
Yes, thank you for that question. So in short, the answer is probably no. Although we do have something called park enrichment grants, which are grants that can be applied for of up to $1,500 depending on the experience, that can go towards extracurricular opportunities such as starting a service project or going on study abroad, or trying to think what else, starting a business, traveling, things like that. So park enrichment grants are a great way to get some additional funding for extracurricular opportunities. As far as club events that may have an extra cost, typically the club itself will do fundraising efforts or have a payment plan option, but the park does not directly cover those costs.
Awesome. Thank you for that answer, Annie. So this next question is from Graham for Noor. Can I graduate early using the Park Scholarship and use my additional funding towards a master's degree?
Thanks for that question. Yes, there are parks that graduate in 3 years and then fund a year of their master's program with their remaining park funding. There are many accelerated master's programs at state that are in the works right now, and you can definitely graduate early and do one of those. And then another question just came in. For the room and board portion that is covered in the scholarship, does that cover an apartment or only if you're in a dorm room? For Irene.
Thank you, Nora. So yes, it definitely does cover an apartment. Right now, as I mentioned before, I'm in an apartment with 2 other Park Scholars, and we're all using our room and board to cover where we're living. So you can definitely apply it. If you want to live in a dorm, that is great as well, and it will cover those costs. You can also use it. We have some parks in our class who are living in a house and renting, if that's more your style. But yes, it definitely will. My bad. This is another question. So since becoming a park, what has been the most impactful experience you have had with the help of the park? And this one's for Elizabeth. Oh, and you can all chime in if you want at the end.
Thank you, Renee. So for me, so I did not grow up with a lot of money or like resources to do much. My family, we came from Ghana. My dad came here on like a student visa, so we did like not have any money to do anything. So as far as I'm concerned, like everything the park does is like mind blowing. I think I mean, I really love the trips. I really love, Nora alluded to like learning labs earlier. I really loved doing those. But I honestly think the thing that Park empowered me to do that I enjoyed the most was my co-op. Um, I um, I was really worried about taking. So the co-op program is where you take semesters off and you work, and you work at you get into like a year of industry experience in your major. But to do that, you have to take off 2 semesters and a summer, and that's obviously 2 semesters off of coursework. It pushes back your graduation date. It messes up the schedule of classes that you're going to take. It does all kinds of things to your schedule and your plan. And so I was very nervous about doing it, and I was worried about how it would affect Park because I wasn't sure if I'd have the money to do it, if my parents would be able to pay for housing since I was going to have to take a gap and everything. And Park was so supportive through the whole thing. I know that if my college education wasn't being paid for by Park, my parents wouldn't have had the money to pay for my housing for the semester that I wasn't registered as like a full-time student taking classes. They again were able to make sure that I would have my summer classes paid for because again, I don't know that I would have had the money to do that by myself. Staff gave me a lot of really great advice about this is who you can contact if you have questions about this company. This is who you can contact if you have questions about co-op. I just had access to a lot of really great resources, and co-op ended up being one of the like most impactful experiences I've had in my life. Period. I think I like was able to see, this is how I fit, and this is how I fit into an office. This is what it's like to do the thing that I'm studying to do. This is I found out that what I thought I wanted to do in civil engineering, which is my major, was not actually what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something entirely different, and I wouldn't have known that without co-op. I think I'd be a completely different person if I hadn't felt empowered through Park, and been given the resources through Park to do that. And so I think that's probably the most impactful experience I've had. And again, that just goes back to, I think, the answers that a lot of us gave for why do we choose the Park, is that I just felt really supported. And it's incredible to come to campus and know that if you are considering doing anything that is like remotely terrifying, because it, deviates from your chosen path, or deviates from what you think people in college, quote unquote, should be doing, there is an office full of people who will sit with you and talk through the decision with you and give you enough information you need to make sure that you're making the decision that's best for you, and that money is not an issue when it comes to doing what you want to do and chasing your dreams. So I think that's something that's meant a lot to me in my 4 years. And then if anyone else wants to chime in on that answer.
Thank you for that answer, Elizabeth. And I'll just add real quick, for those of you who may be interested in research, that's been one of the most impactful experiences that I've had access to thanks to the Park Scholarships program. We talked a little earlier about Park's amazing network. So I actually found my current research mentor through the Park network, and he's fantastic, and I'm in a really great lab now. So that's an example, I think, of how the Park network can be really effective in helping you reach your goals. Does anyone else want to chime in on that question?
I can chime in a little bit. So I don't know, I'm from Guatemala. So, when I was little, I didn't think that I was going to be able to go to school in the US. So just the past couple of years and just being able to, come here and say oh, I'm part of, this program and it's really great. And I'm able to do all these things. It was super cool. So like Elizabeth, every every little thing that I can do extra because of the park, it's incredible. But yeah.
Great. So we will move to our next question from Lee. Are you eligible for multiple scholarships in relation to the Park Scholarship if you use all of your funding for your master's degree? And this question is for Annie.
So first, we just want to clarify that the Park is an undergraduate program. It is only if you graduate early that you can then apply to your master's at NC State. That being said, plenty of students do receive graduate funds, either through applying that additional funding that they didn't use at NC State in their 8 semesters, or by going on to Park giving them the platform to go on to earn additional scholarships through other programs that do fund your master's degree.
Thank you, Annie. So now we have a question from Graham. And this question is, what are some examples of the types of alumni that have come out of Park? And this one's for Elizabeth.
Thank you, Renee. So Graham, this is a great question. I'm assuming you're referring to just where alumni work and what they do now. So alumni do all kinds of things. Park is a program that takes in a lot of really multifaceted people with a lot of varying skills, and alumni reflect that. We have alumni who work at Google and Cisco and Apple and all manner of tech companies that you could think of. There's a lot of alumni in my industry in civil engineering. There's alumni who are veterinarians, who do research, who I don't know, anything you can think of. We probably have an alumni that does it. And again, it's that Park network is really incredible. You can search anything. And we have an internal database where alumni can keep up to date with what they're doing and what industries they're working in and what companies they're working for. And you can type in, I'm sure, any company imaginable, and it'll pop up with an alumni who's doing that thing. So truly, it's anything that you can think of alumni are doing. We have an alum who is, I believe, he's probably up for re-election now, but he is a state senator, if I'm getting that right, state house representative for Massachusetts. I'm so sorry if I messed it up, Tommy. But he launched his campaign through Park. He did a huge event, a huge campaign event at a Park event, and went on to win. So alumni, again, if you can think of it, there's probably an alumni who does it.
I will go ahead and ask the next question. So the question is, can you take an overloaded schedule to graduate early? And Nor, do you want to answer this?
Sure. You can build your schedule however you like. If you do want to graduate early, that you can completely do that. But you do get 8 semesters worth of funding. So if you do graduate early, you can probably, I would recommend probably using it for either doing a master's or something else, but that is not guaranteed. You can just graduate early and take use your schedule to graduate early, and that'd be it. But you do not have to graduate. You can graduate early. You do not have to graduate within 4 years. If that, sorry, I completely jumbled that up. But yeah, the download answer is yes. You can graduate early. Sorry.
Thanks for that answer, Noor. Our next question is from Evan. Can you give examples of how Park has connected you with alumni in your field? Has this led to mentorships or internships? And this question is for Irene.
Thanks, Daniel and Evan. Boy, this is a really great question, and I have a lot of answers. First, I was able to connect with my current Park mentor, and again, his name is Dr. Flowers, which was great. It was a great way to get to know him, and I had a meeting and just learned a lot about his life. Also, I was able to connect with some professors in the College of Veterinary Medicine through Park. And right now, I'm doing something which is something that Park Scholars do on their sophomore year, which is called a Civil Engagement Initiative, which you kind of do like a project with organizations that don't have the time to accomplish the goals in your project by themselves. So you kind of give them a hand. And right now, I'm working with the Museum of Natural Science here in Raleigh, and I was able to meet some great people, and hopefully, that can lead to an internship or things like that. And then there's also, like Elizabeth mentioned, we have our network of alumni, which is called Spiffy. And through there, I've met 2 veterinarians that were also Park Scholars. So there's definitely a ton of connections. Literally anybody you ask in Park will tell you at least 3 connections that they've made within their field. And that's if you're a freshman. If you're a sophomore and up, there's just so many links with so many people, and all you need to do is just ask. But yeah, great question.
Awesome. Thanks for that answer, Irene. So we have our next question from Katie. If you're taking a different internship in the spring semester of high school, would you suggest highlighting what you're expecting to be doing at the internship on the application? And that question is for Daniel.
That's a great question, Katie. And this answer, I think, is going to apply to anyone who has exciting plans for your spring semester of high school. You are welcome to include that in the activities section of the Common or Coalition app. But maybe you might have already used up those 10 spaces for other past involvement. And if that's the case, you are welcome to use the additional information section to talk about that upcoming activity. So however you want to use the slots available to you to talk about the cool things you're doing, we're eager to hear about them.
The next question is from Jillian, and they asked, if my school already had a Park Scholar 2 years before, would that affect me becoming a semifinalist? Elizabeth, would you mind tackling this one?
Yes, I can. Thanks, Annie. Jillian, no. So if that were the case, Annie and I would not be here. Our school tends to have a lot of Parks who are from that school. We tend to have just as a product of what the school is, a lot of applicants who go on to get the Park. So that doesn't affect your chances at all. Again, the only school information that would affect like the context of your application is, the number of AP classes and things like that, or what the GPA scale is. But as far as like we were accepting too many Parks from this school, we got to stop. That's not an issue. You don't have to worry about that. And then Renee, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, also I wanted to touch in, also if your school has never had a Park Scholar, I know I'm from Georgia, so I didn't know what Park was till I clicked on the NC State financial aid link, and then I was like, oh, there it is. So if your school has never had a park, it's also, you have the same amount of chance. So don't worry about that either.
All right, our next question is, community service is a big part of the scholarship. In the era of COVID-19, where many of the traditional service opportunities are not available, do you have any tips to still help out your community virtually or with low levels of contact? And Annie can get this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you guys may know, it is actually, the community is in need more than ever. I think coming up with your own service project is one great way to get involved. Another is, like I mentioned earlier, going on some sites like Activate Good or Googling what needs help. There's also still nonprofits like homeless shelters and hospitals that still have to work, and they still have to need volunteers. So a lot of them are coming up with protocols for accepting volunteers through either virtual projects or coming in and doing a socially distanced activity. Another way to get involved is some organizations are doing things like virtual 5Ks or virtual fundraising events. That's a great way to get involved. I know for myself, I have been doing some online work with an organization, so that's possible. But yeah, there are still organizations looking for volunteers. So just reach out to communities that you're interested in or populations you're interested in working with and ask how you can be of help. And most likely there is a need still there.
Thank you, Annie. So now we have a question from Jamie. And the question is, I'm considering majoring in aerospace engineering, which I read requires a 5th year. So how would that affect the 8th semester funding? And this question is for Daniel.
Great question, Jamie. I'm also an engineer, so I'm excited to receive this question. No worries. There are many Park Scholars, first of all, who finish their engineering degree in 4 years, even aerospace engineering. That said, if it does take you 5 years, that's totally okay. That happens to plenty of people. You would just have to fund that 5th year yourself, as the Park Scholarship is only for 8 semesters. Of course, Park puts you in a great position to apply for other sources of funding that may help support you. But again, Park would cover those 4 years, and then you would support yourself for the 5th.
Thanks for that answer, Daniel. Our next question is from Jacob for Annie. Do Park Scholars get priority class selection over other undergrads?
The short answer is yes. So students are put in a priority group for registration, and that means they typically get to register earlier than peers of their same class year. So NC State does registration by seniors first, or based on credit hours. So seniors first, then juniors, and so on. But giving you, having the Park Scholarship puts you up a rank even above that. And I'll go ahead and ask the next question. So if your grades fall during your course of study, is there a chance that you may lose the scholarship? And I'll throw that one to Noor.
Thanks. So the Park Scholarship and Park staff are very understanding that we have rough semesters sometimes, and that's perfectly okay. We have a lot going on in our lives. And we do have GPA minimums. So I think 2.75 freshman year, 3.0 for the rest of your years. But that's because we understand that it can be really hard to adjust to college, and coming in classes may be very difficult. So it's okay, and we have room for you to fail. And one of the biggest things about Park is that we want to fail to learn from those failures. So it's in no way stigmatized at all, Park, if you don't do your best that semester. So it's totally okay. We want you to be able to take risks.
Unfortunately, we are coming to the end of our time for today. We want to thank you guys that you were able to join us for this information session. You asked fantastic questions and we're very thankful for that. We want to point out, if you have any additional questions or comments on our presentation, feel free to email Park Scholarships at park_scholars@ncsu.edu or visit our website at park.ncsu.edu. Again, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to hopefully reviewing your application soon. Thank you.